Don't know what to do if you have little money? Well, in that case, you should definitely read this article to the end, which, provided that you fully and correctly assimilate it, will rid you of this unpleasant, but not catastrophic problem. For me, this problem is not a problem at all, it is just a certain set of circumstances that cause temporary difficulties with money. Yes, I am not exaggerating at all. I have eaten a dog on solving problems with money, so now even with the help of one article I can help you sort out your deplorable financial situation. When a person has little money, he most likely does not pay due attention to his handling of it, as a result of which the money he has behaves in a certain way. Did you know that money can be very capricious and therefore does not stay in our wallets and accounts? No, not in itself, of course, but because of our attitude towards it, it becomes capricious. But once we tame this element, then money will begin to obey us, and we will take it under complete control. What do you think affects your financial situation, your personal qualities, or external circumstances? In fact, to a certain extent both, but still to a much greater extent, your personal qualities affect it. I assure you, if you pay attention to yourself, and not to external circumstances on which your income depends, you will come to a solution to all your problems with money faster. If there is little money in your life, it means that somewhere in something you are weak, you do not know and do not understand something, you cannot do something. But it's okay, you and I will sort out all these matters. You have contacted a professional by coming to this site, so read this article carefully, the recommendations set out in it are what you need. After all, if you do not know this yet, I myself once experienced a great need for money. And then, thanks exclusively to myself, I slowly crawled out of poverty, and now I feel quite comfortable. Let's start solving your money problem by defining its essence. You say that you have little money, but I want to know little for what? What exactly do you lack it for? For life in general or for something specific? And how long have you had this problem with a lack of money? Have you always lacked it? Specify the essence of the problem you have. There may be many such questions, but for now answer these questions that I asked you in order to understand what is special about your problem. I will tell you a little secret. As for money, there is always little. Yes, there really is always little. Of course, there are people in this world who, oddly enough, have enough money, but there is not much of it, because they are not just wealthy people, but also very smart. So you definitely need to define the situation that is problematic for you. Maybe it is not as problematic for you as it seems to you. If you live very poorly in general and you have little money just for living, when you don't even have enough to buy food or pay for housing, then that's one problem, and a very serious one, I must say. But if you don't have enough money for everything that's shown on TV today, then that's a completely different problem, less serious in terms of problems with your budget, but no less serious in terms of problems with your head. Friends, I've always lived, and still live, in principle, a fairly full life, and that's why I communicate very often with different people. I've had the chance to communicate with people of varying levels of wealth. More people have passed through me than through the entire pension system, and by God, they all don't have enough money. I have had occasion to communicate with both very poor and fairly rich people. Unfortunately, I have not communicated with very rich people, who, in their own words, equally lacked money, as they said, for a normal life. Not for a luxurious life, but for a normal one, and as I understand it, this concept of normality is purely subjective. People have 1,000-fold difference in income, and they equally complain about a lack of money. And what does this mean? That some of them really do not have enough money, and someone only thinks that they do not have enough? Right? So, despite the formal similarity of the problem with money for both the rich and the poor, it is necessary to solve it in different cases differently, because it is in essence, and not in form, that these are different problems. Each person, to the extent of his development, finds, if there are none, some problems in his life, which he then tries to solve in order to occupy himself with something interesting. But I don't want to say that there are no problems with money. Of course they do. It's just that each person interprets them in their own way, and that's why sometimes we see a mountain blown out of a molehill. In one case, when we talk about poor people who really don't have enough money to live, their problem is primarily a lack of knowledge about money. Whereas in another case, when a rich person doesn't have enough money, we have to talk about his greed or immoderation of his desires, because of which he will always have little of this money. So you definitely need to determine the specifics of your problem before using any of my recommendations. If you are poor, then start studying everything that is somehow connected with money. For example, this site. There are many useful articles here, and there will be even more. And after some time, there will be more money in your life, because you will become smarter. And if you are simply a greedy person, then you especially need to read my articles, through which I will help you go beyond your instinctive reactions to the world around you. Now let's talk about the objective reasons for the lack of money, without understanding which it is impossible to solve the problem with them. The financial situation of any person depends on only two things: on his income and his expenses. Theoretically, if you are an incredibly cool person in life, you can think only about income and completely spit on expenses. When you have little money, you just go and earn, no matter in what way, more, then even more, and so on. This is really cool. But since not only American walkers are cool, but also eggs, as well as mountain slopes, I still recommend that you take into account not only your income, but also your expenses. Keep in mind that a constant increase in your income in no way excludes a parallel increase in your expenses, which in most cases grow even faster than your income, thereby not changing your idea of your financial situation, which continues to dissatisfy you. If you have little money, it means that your income is small and your expenses are irrational, and it also means, if we recall the very beginning of this article, that your personal qualities do not allow you to solve these issues with income and expenses. So what should we start with in this case, with optimizing your financial situation or with yourself? From experience, I will say that it is better to start with the latter, because the faster you sort yourself out, the less significant your current problem with money will seem to you. Below you will find more detailed recommendations on the issue of your work on yourself. In the meantime, let's pay attention to your income. What does it depend on? I think you will agree with me if I say that your income depends on your level of education, your professional qualities, and, most importantly, on your psychological state. Do you know that having a negative attitude towards money, you thereby push yourself away from it? It is not money that you are pushing away from yourself, as you can often hear in various TV shows, in which the hosts stupidly repeat the words of various writers, while they themselves do not understand a damn thing about this issue, but it is yourself that you are pushing away from them. But that's not all, that's not the root of your money problem. If you haven't read my other articles yet, and I highly recommend you do, for your own good, then you probably don't know that a positive attitude towards money does not mean a good, much less a fanatical attitude towards it. Poor people are right when they say that money is not what brings happiness and that money is not the most important thing in life, despite the opposite statements on this issue from rich people. It's just that the poor don't understand anything from what they repeat after someone else, and the rich speak in a way that suits them. In fact, a person should treat himself first and foremost, he should love and respect himself, and he should work intensively on himself. This, if you like, is the secret of any success, which depends on the qualities possessed by the person who wants to achieve it. Your income is small and you have problems with money precisely because you are not developed enough for a better life, for which it is necessary to have certain qualities and skills. This in no way means that you are some kind of wrong person, a moron, a weakling, etc. That is not the point. Often, everything comes down to banal negative attitudes of a person towards himself, which most of us were instilled with since childhood. The point is not whether we consider money evil or good, not how we treat it, the point is our attitude towards ourselves. If you think that there is something that you will never be able to cope with, then you definitely have a problem of a psychological nature. I am not a psychologist, and therefore I cannot tell you what exactly the failures in your brain make you an insecure person and limit your opportunities, but I know exactly what you need to do in such a case. And the following needs to be done: you need to start doing what you are most afraid of doing. Well, I'm not saying that you should go jump with a parachute or enter the ring against the world boxing champion. You are an adequate person, you don't need it. I'm talking about your life goals, which you, to use the language of the young, are afraid to realize, or even afraid to set them. But you don't have to be afraid of this, you don't have to be afraid to set more ambitious goals in life, you don't have to be content with little, because your fear is strong only because you don't understand what it is. If you have never done something, it does not mean that you cannot do it. Ambitious goals are not unattainable goals, they are simply goals for which you need to take your personal qualities to a qualitatively new level. For example, you can improve your professional skills and thereby objectively increase the value of your labor. Do you not have enough money because your salary is small? What should you do to increase it? Probably, find another job, or become such a useful employee at your current job that your boss cannot, or better said, does not dare to refuse you a salary increase. In this case, a promotion would not be superfluous for you. But remember that no sensible boss will pay a high salary to an unproductive employee. Simply put, if you do not earn $10,000 for your boss, he will not pay you $1,000 from them, because it is not profitable for him. Work is work, it pays you a small percentage of what you actually earn with your labor. If you want to get more benefit from your labor, start a business. So, having decided to demand a salary increase, or even change your job, you should take into account your capabilities, which should meet your requirements. And if they do not meet them, then you need to improve your qualifications, then the demand for you as a specialist will increase, and this will be a quality demand. I'm afraid I'm wrong in the numbers, but as far as I remember, these are statistics for Russia. We have only 5% of skilled workers out of the entire working population. Only 5%. Do you understand how little this is? For comparison, in the same United States of America, skilled workers make up 50%, and in Germany 45%. Do you feel the difference? What do we pay people money for them to sit around in their offices, surfing social networks? Think about it, wanting to increase your income. In this country, in Russia, as it turns out, there is not such a big competition for highly paid jobs. And do not say that a good job can only be found through connections, that connections or money are needed for this. Don't talk nonsense. In a market economy, it is not profitable to keep a slacker with a high salary in an important position, even if this slacker is your relative. Of course, anyone can crawl to the state trough, but even in our state Duma, where it is unclear why boxers, gymnasts, and singers sit, sometimes you have to think, so there are clearly more people with brains there than without them. If you live in another country, then look up the demand for labor in your country on the internet, and see which employers' needs you can adequately respond to. In other words, you can solve the money problem by selling your labor more profitably. But if you don't know how to do anything, if your professional skills leave much to be desired, then there is no point in running from place to place for an extra penny. And in the same way, there is no point in asking your boss for a raise without offering him anything worthwhile in return. After all, it would be more profitable for him, your boss, to replace you with another, the same as you, low-skilled worker, with lower demands, than to raise your salary. This is what concerns work. But as for business, everything is even more simple and clear. In it, you will reap what you sow. It is business that will allow you to learn the truth about yourself. It will show you your true face, what you are really worth. If you are a smart and hardworking person, then any business you create will bring you good income, and if you only think that you are smart and work well, but in fact this is not so, then your business will show you that you are wrong. So if you have little money, think about how to add a little intelligence to yourself so that it will allow you to increase your income. And you, as I said above, are actually a smart person. It's just that your psychological state does not allow you to realize your potential. You are lazy, you doubt, you do not think that you are capable of something, and so on and so forth. In general, all sorts of infections in your head prevent you from showing yourself to the fullest. Of course, you may not know something, you may be wrong about something, you may not understand something. Anything can be wrong with you, you are a human being, not God. But this is not a problem, you see, we are all unfinished to a certain extent, we are all not perfect. But you can always correct any shortcomings in yourself, you can always learn what you do not know, you can learn new skills, you can become a more professional specialist and increase the price of your work, objectively increase it. Here is the way to solve your problems with money, follow it, and you will have enough money. Now let's talk about another reason why you have little money, your expenses. Everything is clear with income, it needs to be regularly increased, for which you need to constantly and actively develop yourself, first of all as a specialist, because no one will want to pay a lot of money to an unskilled worker. Well, you can either go into business to increase your income, or go into politics, where there is even more money, and then you will definitely not have problems with income. But expenses are a completely different problem, everyone faces it, both very poor and very rich people. Expenses, without due attention to them, quickly reduce to zero all your efforts to get money, they, one might say, begin to control you. These are the same capricious money that I wrote about at the very beginning of this article, and it is this capriciousness of money that forces people with different incomes to say that they have little money. Most people nowadays, not accustomed to saving and accumulating money, have all the money they earn slipping through their fingers like sand through a sieve. I personally know people who don't even hold the money they earn in their hands. They immediately use it to pay off all their debts, of which they always have a lot. And of course, they say that they have little money, while I would say differently, they have none at all. Thus, you need to pay attention right now to all your cash expenses, both mandatory and optional, and evaluate their rationality. Just don't beat your chest and claim that all your cash expenses are mandatory and necessary. Of course, I can't speak for each of you, but still, my experience in solving financial problems allows me to claim that maybe not half, but certainly 30% of all your cash expenses cannot be called necessary. Simply put, you spend about a third of your earnings on all sorts of nonsense, which may bring you pleasure for a short time, but in general, all this nonsense prevents you from living a normal life. If you didn't spend your money on things you don't need and didn't overpay for individual goods and services, all this intrusive and irritating advertising on TV simply wouldn't exist. And since it does, it means you'll fall for it and spend your hard-earned money on all sorts of junk or overpay for expensive and absolutely unnecessary goods. That's why you have so little of it. So you need to stabilize your budget by reviewing your expenses, and be sure to do it with a cool head. If it's convenient for you, then write down on a piece of paper all those monetary expenses that deprive you of your honestly earned money. Justify for yourself each outflow of money from your budget that you provoked, and try to refuse all obviously senseless monetary expenses. Don't indulge your whims, you're an adult, you need to be more responsible with money. Be sure to understand this very important issue for you. Just take the word of a person who sincerely wishes you financial well-being. Money, as I have already said, is always short, but it is one thing when it is so short that you have nothing to eat, and quite another when you flush money down the toilet due to your own ignorance, and thereby ruin your own life. Your attitude to money should be calm and even, without any bias in one direction or another. You should not have a negative attitude towards money, and you should not pray to it, putting it above all else. The most important thing you have in your life is yourself, and it is your decisions that will determine how money will come to you and where, and to whom, it will leave you. When you do not know what to do, if you have little money, then you urgently need to plug all the holes in your budget, and only then think about the income that you actually have. Once again, the primary task that you need to solve, in the case when there is a real shortage of money in your life, is a careful study of all your expenses. You are not the United States of America. You cannot constantly increase your consumption at the expense of other people. It will turn out sideways for you. Therefore, count your expenses and put them in order, by strictly controlling them. Human nature is such, remember this, that he always wants more than everything. And money is always less, and this generally accepted truth, which reflects our essence, should always be taken into account by you. I can't say anything about the situation of each of you individually, but the general picture is that a person always creates problems for himself, because he cannot live without them. And therefore, your problem with money has become a consequence of your decisions.